The following program is an original production of WICC PBS Chicago.
College and grade school mascots have stirred a lot of controversy in recent years. Remember Chief Alinowick? Oregon's Board of Education has cut state funding to schools that fail to retire their Native American mascots, and Wisconsin has forced schools to drop race-based mascots. The controversy over school mascots, some say they honor certain cultures and others call them offensive. That's coming up on today's edition of The Professors. Joining us to talk about school mascots are Michael Crenshaw, English professor at Daly College, Michael Silverstein, professor at the University of Chicago, and Dr. Nick Panamitros, attorney and professor at Kennedy King, Harper College, and UIC. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
So we're here today to talk about the Native American mascot issue. And in the news recently, there's been a push to really get rid of the national team, the Washington Redskins, and that mascot. The owner of the Redskins said, and I quote, "We will never change the name. It's that simple, never, and you can use caps." So why is there so much opposition to changing a name that many people find to be offensive?
Well, my sense is that people realize that the word Redskins, or the name Redskins, was a nickname that has been in use as a term of derogation since the very beginning. It's never had a good connotation to it. And so, you know, to call someone a Redskin in the old days, you find it in Fenimore Cooper and various kinds of pieces of literature from the early 19th century. It was in the time of war between Anglos and Native Americans, and the Anglos called the enemy Redskins.
Sure.
In the way in which during the Second World War, I recall people referred to Japanese people as Japs, or Germans as Jerrys, and so on and so forth.
Interesting. There are 62 schools in 22 states that actually use that particular name for their mascot, the Redskins. And many people, and I want to come to you guys on this, but many people say, well, hey, you know, Native Americans, what's the difference between this and, say, the Fighting Irish? Or should Twins get upset by the Minnesota Twins mascot, that sort of thing? And people joke about it. What do you think is the difference when it comes to, say, Redskins or the issue of Native American mascots in general?
You know, I'd like to say that certainly it's for, you know, monetary gains that they don't want to change the catchy mascot name. And also, you know, Redskins, nowadays, most people have never met an American Indian and don't really think about it in derogation, as you were saying. But certainly when you look at the Fighting Irish and then you look at Redskin mascot symbols, usually there's a summation, there's a face that has been somehow designed. This is what the physiognomia of a Redskin person.
Sure.
Whereas Fighting Irish is usually a leprechaun.
Okay.
Or a three-leaf clover that's being used here. So I think that
But leprechauns, remember, are lucky, and that's what a mascot is supposed to be. And the crucial issue is what luck is there to, as it were, imitate a Native American.
Well, it's the idea that they would fight. You had mentioned earlier that you know the days when the folks here were fighting the Indians of European ancestry.
Sure.
And so that fighting is what I think that promotes the use of Redskin
But I think
name.
probably one thing that is very clearly distinct between the Native American mascot and other mascots that refer to ethnic groups is the unique history that American has with its Native American population. The Native Americans right now live close to 40% are on reservations, close to 30% are in poverty, and they make up less than 1% of the population in a nation where they were the population at one point. So I would argue, and I would ask your opinion on this, isn't that different than, say, talking about some Irish person or that sort of thing with a unique historic context?
It's very different, and my thing has always been, when it comes to mascots, well, first off, we need to understand that mascots really are supposed to be for kids, number one.
Okay.
And number two, you know, they're supposed to be for entertainment purposes, you know, when there's a timeout or something like that. However, for some reason, mascots have, you know, some mascots, depending on the college, have morphed into, you know, some sort of evil, angry type of symbol. My thing has always been, why not go to the race that you are trying to honor, loosely quoted, and go to them and find out whether or not this is truly an honor, the symbol that you're using, instead of just placing it out there. See, there's the problem. There's no communication. And then when Native Americans, for instance, whenever they may complain, they may, people may say, "Oh, it's not that big of a deal."
Well, you're only 1% of the population.
Right, but the thing is, it should be a big deal. See, that's the problem. I think too many races, want to take ownership of how another race feels. And there's your problem.
Appropriation, that's the key word. People are trying to appropriate, in a certain sense, all of the supposed good things that come from somebody else.
Sure.
Right?
Well,
without permission.
Right, exactly.
Well, if we took the fighting Redskins and said the fighting Blackskins or the fighting Whiteskins, how do we feel?
Sure,
how do
so-
I feel about that? I find it slightly offensive.
Well, that's very
perhaps.
interesting. I use this in my class all the time, and I bring this conversation up, and my students go, well, I've had students say, what's the big deal? And then I take that scenario and I say, well, what if the New York Knicks change their name to some name Negroes or something like that? And people who were not of African descent dressed up in blackface and danced around and
I believe that used to go on about 150
it
years
sure
ago.
did, actually, absolutely. We'd be up in arms, and yet it happens to Native Americans every single day. Why is there not more of an uproar about this issue?
Well, there is an uproar, but as you also pointed out before, a large number of Native Americans live on reservations, which are, as you know, in the remotest, inaccessible places in North America. Number one, and as Nick said, how many urban people know when they've encountered a Native American?
Out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. So the crucial issue is that you do have a great number of activists who are very, very upset by this. And in fact, that was the origin of forcing the trustees of the University of Illinois to do away with Chief Illiniwek.
Well,
it happens.
let's talk about that. Let's bring that close to home, because we've got one of the major sort of controversies happening right here, or happened right here in the state. In 2007, the University of Illinois stopped using Chief Illiniwek. Now, you're a graduate of the University of Illinois, and I know you have a unique perspective on this. What are your thoughts about Chief Illiniwek? And I read about it. I didn't go to U of I, but I've read about this movement of people that want to save the chief and support the chief and bring the chief back, and they're doing these dances at games and things. What was the environment like at U of I?
When I was there, because I was there from 94 to 99, and when I was there, you would go to the game and everybody, go crazy, cheer, all of that. But then when Chief Illiniwek would come out, everyone would get quiet and hush and stand and all of that. The thing is, so
there was a bit of reverence there.
There was. There was somewhere. And the thing is, there was an uproar, and I think this leads to the larger argument about whether or not Native Americans really had a serious uproar. We could probably talk about that later. There was an uproar, but it wasn't a really, really big segment of the Champaign-Urbana population. So what would happen is initially, when it came out, I forget the name of the tribe. I'm sorry, it escapes me. But the leader initially came out and said, well, we don't have a problem with this. It's fine. Then after he retired, someone else came on and took over. And then he said, now we have an issue. And then it became a political thing in terms of, well, President, Chancellor wanted to save face, so now they want to go ahead and get rid of it. But I can honestly tell you, as a student, and a lot of my friends, we honestly really didn't care.
Of course not. You're a college student. You're going to the game just to have a good time, right?
So, but
what
as
about
I
all
got
those
older,
pictures, though, of this chief dancing around like a madman?
Again, as college students.
Hey, man, they were going to the game to have a good time.
I suppose.
As college
He was
students.
acting as a mascot.
As college students.
Halftime is 3 pints down.
Right, exactly.
That's another conversation, yes.
Even though technically alcohol's not supposed to be served at any college.
Yes,
sorry,
absolutely.
Technically. But as a college student, we didn't care. It was no big deal to some of us. And so we would see the uproar and we would say, what's the big deal? So I am guilty of this. I would say, why do you care? You shouldn't be offended. It's not a big deal, because I was ignorant to how Native Americans felt, and a lot of students were ignorant as well.
Do you know that polls show that the perception of this issue really, unfortunately, is based on race?
Yeah.
So there was an AP poll that was done around this, and among football fans, only 18% of football fans said that it should change.
See?
But, however, that was among all ethnicities. When you got down to Europeans, people of European descent, only 9% of those said that it was a big deal at all. And so maybe this is an issue of empathy, right? And really sort of understanding what other people go through. I think, I think that's a very important point, right?
I think empathy, but I also think it's a matter of understanding.
Sure.
People need to truly understand what the issues are. But also, from a Native American standpoint, people talk about uproar. Mm-hmm. My question would be, okay, yes, you are making a lot of noise about this issue, but where are you making the noise? The difference is when it comes to certain ethnicities, whether you're black or Hispanic, whenever an issue comes up, we will have that platform to say something.
Yeah,
right?
But Michael, there's a difference, man.
But no. But think about it.
Yeah.
There is a platform. Will Native Americans, whether this is a fair question or not, will they get to the platform, whether it's television or radio?
Go ahead, Nick.
To actually say something.
I would find it offensive as a Native American for a couple of reasons. It seems as though the only thing people know, or what we show is that they were fighters. Mm-hmm. But who were they fighting? They were fighting people that invaded their land.
Right.
And they lost fighting.
Sure.
And so I don't know, what connotation, how it makes somebody feel, but if I was of that race or of that of one of the Indian Nation tribes, I would feel offended that nobody knows anything else more other than that. Yeah. Now, the Irish, fighting Irish is a different story. I mean, most people know something about Irish culture, Western.
They were conquered.
Europe.
They were conquered too by the Brits.
Exactly.
Well, so, the other piece about the fighting
but
Irish.
we know more about them.
Oh, to be sure.
People to watch that.
And it's people of Irish descent.
They support these schools.
We're a very large segment of the European population in the United States for a long time.
I would guess that with all due respect, Michael, to what you're saying about this, should the onus be on them? Should we say, well, hey, they're not making enough noise, so it's okay? I mean, once again, they're less than 1% of the population. African Americans 13%, Latinos 15%. There are a lot of additional channels that we have to voice opposition. I would argue that
you sound a little bit like the Supreme Court now. In terms of electoral rules and so forth.
Absolutely.
I don't think mere numbers are really what count here.
No,
the crucial point
don't.
is that offense is offense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if people really are, if people are deeply wounded and offended by what they perceive to be a stereotype, all right, in any of these kinds of contexts of mascots and so forth, that should really be something that counts. Absolutely.
But the thing is, that reasonable standard, that reasonable person standard, is it everybody, or do you look at it per race? What a reasonable person of American Indian descent, how they would feel, as opposed to what a reasonable person, generally any American, would feel. I think you're going to find it to be different.
Well, think about this. Actually,
indeed, yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, indeed, just as you were saying before, 18% of the overall population were concerned, but only 9% of people who were white. Right?
Sure. And I would say, now here's a sort of crazy piece of this puzzle. So Chief Illiniwek, there's a lot of support within the community for Chief Illiniwek. Florida State, when the NCAA came out with this ban, Florida State was exempted from the ban because they were able to prove that the Native Americans in the community wanted the support. They wanted the Florida State Seminole mascot. The way that the owner of the Redskins is dealing with this now is that as a result of this controversy, he's opened up a charity and a foundation to support Native Americans. So it seems like
paying for the offense.
Essentially, yeah.
Perpetually.
Right?
That's a joke.
Okay, that is. And maybe that's a separate. I shouldn't have brought that one up. Okay.
That's a whole
It's
show.
it's very cynical, of course.
Yes,
but,
it is.
I mean,
Very
but that goes into the area of what usually be called reparations.
Sure, absolutely.
Bribery.
Absolutely. So, but back to the question of Florida State. So, if the Native American community supports it, then is it okay?
And that's what I was saying earlier in terms of what colleges and universities need to do. If you want to do anything of this nature, go to that actual race, go to that culture and say, hey, this is our idea. This is what we want to do. What do you think? If I am offensive, if I'm being offensive to you in any way, shape, or form, let me know. Educate me.
Why don't we just change the name altogether?
I think we just
you
change
know?
it. Change it to Pitbull or
Yeah,
something
why do you have
else.
to have human beings as mascots?
Well, see, the thing is, it's too much money, and the thing when it comes to the Florida State Seminoles, winning national championships, the Washington Redskins,
Atlanta Braves, Cleveland Indians.
Atlanta Braves won 14 NL East titles in a row.
The Blackhawks, we can talk about them.
Blackhawks won 2 Stanley Cups in 4 years. The thing is, if I'm bringing money in, see, that's how you get people. You get people, A, by taking money away, but B, and I'm going to stand on this point, and I know we disagree.
Okay.
You need to come up and open your mouth on the right platform. You cannot scream and yell behind closed doors.
Michael, I don't know if that's the issue. I don't know.
I think it is.
I think
don't
after-
agree with that.
I think you got to say something. I don't.
I think we can ask the professor, but I think in the late 1880s there was a shift. And if you look at the coins, American coins, the old nickel, the Buffalo nickel had an American Indian on it. So I don't know that necessarily it was ever made out to be offensive intentionally. It might have been actually sort of to honor the American tribes.
Go ahead.
But
That's ambiguous in a certain way, because as I was saying before, the word is appropriation. Euro-Americans really for a long time tried appropriating what they thought were the kind of stereotypic
That's a very good
strengths
point.
of Native Americans.
Exactly.
And that appropriation has suddenly come back now to hit people, in the wrong way.
Right.
That it has been an appropriation.
although the
in that
intention might have
sense.
been a good one, it's that stereotypic thinking that is of issue right now.
Absolutely. There used to be clubs. There used to be clubs of young men all over the Northeast who dressed up like Native American folks from the Northeast, Iroquoian groups and so forth, and used to have lodges and so on. In fact, many of our fraternal lodges are lodges and they have totems, the eagle, the moose, the elk, and so on and so forth, because all of it an imitation of Native Americans.
I'd like to read a quote about that, because I think you hit on a very important point. There is a school district in Arizona where there is a Redskin mascot.
Is there a school district in Arizona?
But I'm bummed. Still, okay. And they have that's funny. And they have a Redskin mascot, and the superintendent is Native American. And his issue, actually, interestingly enough, was not with the name of the mascot, the Redskin. His issue was with the way that the dances and drum rhythms are represented. So he says this. This is very interesting. He says, "We don't use gestures and traditions that are used in the games. As Navajos, we have respect for warfare. Warfare means taking a life. And when a young man goes out to battle, those gestures belong there, not at a sports game." And so in many ways, I could see how that sacred piece of war and that sacred ritual is really, many people feel it's a mockery in certain ways. I had an experience where I was actually protesting this issue 20 years ago. Okay, I was 2, by the way.
Of course.
And we were outside the Atlanta Braves Stadium, and we were kind of talking about this. We had a sign set up, and people just kind of walked by and laughed as though it wasn't anything. And I just, the whole concept of this sacredness, I think it's a big issue that people, when you're at a sports game and you're drinking, you're having fun, maybe they're not understanding the sacred nature of these rituals.
Because for them, sports is a way of escape. See, when you go to a sporting event or you play on a team, it's to get away from all of the alleged drama that's going on outside. So they are coming to an event to watch their team, hope that their team wins, and have a good time in the process. So the last thing that they even want to even think about is any kind of protest. And then on top of that, they may find these types of, they being sports fans that go to the game, not all, you don't want to generalize, but some of them may find it silly, because it's like, okay, there's a time and a place for everything in their minds. This is not me speaking, this is them. There's a time and a place for everything. We're just here to have a couple beers and watch the Braves beat the Cubs or something like that. So
yeah, I mean, it's not a
and that's what the NFL commissioner said, by the way.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not sure that they were laughing. Were they laughing at you? I wasn't sure.
No, they were laughing at me. They may have, I don't know.
Probably laughing at the probability of anything happening on the basis of
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
kind of a
absolutely,
protest.
absolutely.
So it was like not being
Yeah.
able to have a voice, to go back to the question of whether or
Right.
not Native Americans
But the
have
issue's
one.
come a long way because there are a number of schools, you know, Stanford, U of I, even in Chicago, Hyde Park High School, that has gotten rid of their Native American mascots. So there are things that that are happening.
Right, but pertaining to what you were talking about, though, more serious, I think people going to a game are not going there thinking about these things.
Sure.
Right.
You know, they're
Right.
not having this kind
Exactly.
of mental
Exactly.
activity. So they're going there to shut down, relax, and so I don't think they really care. And I don't think that their mind's going to anything bad necessarily.
Exactly.
It's just
Exactly.
that what I think what's the issue here is how are people of American Indian descent taking this? How do they feel? And that's what we're concerned about.
And the crucial point is that indeed people don't see the political that is buried inside having
Okay.
a good time, for example, in a certain way. Just as one may say, when second wave feminism was getting steam as a political movement, men kept saying, "Oh, I'm not doing anything. I'm
Right.
just calling you by your first name.
Sure,
right?
sure.
I'm just calling you girls.
Sure.
I'm just blah blah blah," and it went on and on like that. And people said, "Hey, you know, it's so unserious. It's not a matter of anything that is a systematic politics of discrimination."
Sure.
And indeed, finding a voice to be able to say there is a systematic politics of discrimination here is something that one has to rely upon the people who feel discriminated against to bring to attention.
I think it's a very important point. If you separate this from the political context, we talked about poverty. 36% of families on reservations are below the poverty level, right? So you're looking at all of this, and you're looking at what has happened, and then even the chairman of the Senate Indian Affairs, Senator Maria Cantwell, and Senator Tom Cole from Oklahoma. They came out with a statement to the Washington Redskins saying the National Football League can no longer ignore this and perpetuate the use of this name as anything but what it is, a racial slur. So when you put that, even those people in our government who are primarily responsible for the economic and social well-being of Native Americans are saying, listen, this is a bad thing, and you connect it with the history that you mentioned, it makes it a much different story than just a sports game, what's the big deal, that kind of thing, right? Okay.
So,
Yes?
you know, the Gallup people or whoever does these surveys has to ask the questions in a slightly different way, right?
Absolutely, yes,
That is to say,
absolutely.
if somebody was using your particular ethnicity in a derogatory way for mascot purposes or logo purposes, or commercial logo purposes, how would you feel?
Interesting,
You
interesting,
know?
interesting.
A Likert scale,
Sure.
not bad at all the way to furious.
Very, very, very important.
I don't know
With
that it's
concept.
necessarily always, you know, derogatory, but it's not necessarily showing the better attributes of a culture.
Sure.
And so, you know, I think that's part of it too. Is, you know, all we know is that Indians fought. You know, they fought to death and lost. And you know, there were many different.
Except at Little Bighorn.
Yes.
Right, in a few instances, but there were different tribes and there were different kinds of Indians, and each
Right.
one had its own characteristics. If you study these, you know,
About 2,000 different groups and languages.
So you
when
clump them all together, and you
Europeans
pick
came.
this face, and say this is it, and that's all you advertise, and that they fight. I don't. If I was American Indian, I don't think I would be very happy about it.
Sure.
I don't know if it's intentionally done that way, but it's almost in ignorance of the past.
I think that's a
That's
very
where
important
discrimination
point.
starts.
And I think that's why some people who say they'd like to honor it, maybe there's a way to honor the history of Native Americans without sort of making it a piece of a sporting event, right? Maybe there's a way for us to deal with this. You know, I went to a high school, by the way, that actually had Native American mascot. And I promise you, I never once thought about it. And they still actually have it, by the way. It's in South Bend, Indiana. I'm not going to say the name of the school, but there you can figure it out. They're in South Bend, Indiana.
You're right.
But the point is that I never even thought about it, and I think it was just an issue of ignorance. And once I got to college and began to think about these issues, it really changed. So maybe it's ignorance, and maybe the key, as everything comes back to on the professors, is education.
Consciousness raising through that kind of thing. It's absolutely the case. It's very central.
And it'll always, because it goes back to, like I said, when I was at U of I, I'm a college student. I'm just there to watch a game. I'm there to have fun and have a good time. But I've always felt that, just from learning about this and getting more educated about this, that, instead of always making it about war, why not make it about peace? I think that if you had peaceful, demonstrations that would honor, Native American in a peaceful way, instead of always having to be about war and fighting, maybe that would be different. But again, that goes back to my original point. Talk to them. Ask them what they want. Ask them, because maybe they may even say, we don't want any kind of we don't want any kind of message. Don't do anything. And then you should honor that.
So, Michael, I know we're never going to agree on this, but
No, we're not.
I got to try one more time before the show goes.
Okay.
So can we just say, let's just get rid of ethnic mascots altogether? Period. End of discussion.
Only if you stop drinking.
Right, but now that I can agree with.
Okay.
I can agree with that. The only thing that I think where we disagree is the way they do it.
Okay.
Because I'm a huge believer of it's not how you say it, but where and when.
Okay. I'm going to come to you, Nick. We're moving towards the end. I'm going to give Nick the last couple words here. But since the 70s, 600 teams across the country, high school and college, have removed their mascot. So the trend is really heading that way. So we'll see. I have a belief that in 40, 50, 100 years, maybe we won't see any at all, and maybe that would be a good thing. Although,
and then with the Marlins and the Gators and so forth, then
No.
PETA will get into the act
No,
on
it's
behalf
not
of
the
the animals.
it's definitely not the same. Go ahead, Nick.
I agree with you that this conversation having taken place now in the last couple of decades slowly is causing this thing to dwindle down. You see less and less of it. And I think that if eventually in schools, when they teach about American history to elementary school children, some of the literature, some of the books start including a small little paragraph or something about this for kids to acknowledge early on.
Interesting.
I think you'll find the next generation much more aware, and then easily saying, let's just get rid of this. This is not even a topic of conversation. It might offend a race of people, and they're much better attributes that they have that we could show.
Thank you very much. What a wonderful way to end the conversation. Thank you guys very much.
Pleasure to be here.
That's our show for today. The conversation continues online at wycc.org. We'll see you next time on The Professors.